Piracetam is the most widely sold nootropic or so-called smart drug on the market, and it has been for quite some time. It's been around for a very long time, and yet despite this, it has never gained widespread medical use for the purposes of being a cognitive enhancer, which begs the question, is it really a smart drug? Does it really do what people say it does? Or is it a snake oil product? What many of the proponents of Piracetam like to tout is the number of studies that have been conducted on Piracetam. Now, while this is true, a lot of studies have been conducted on Piracetam. What is not widely publicized is the fact that there have been several clinical trials done on Piracetam. Now, clinical trials are what need to be done if you want to sell a product as a pharmaceutical product. You've got to provide hard evidence that it does what it says it does. You've got to do double-blind, placebo-controlled trials, very lengthy trials, and have a lot of evidence, a mountain of evidence to prove that it does what it does in a safe and effective way. Now, most of you probably will have never heard of that Piracetam has gone through clinical trials, and we're going to see why that is. The most recent Piracetam clinical trial was conducted by UCB Pharma in 2007. This clinical trial included people with mild cognitive impairment. People received Piracetam, there were 2 different doses, for a year. So they took Piracetam for a year, and at the end of this trial, they found that not only was there no improvement in the cognition of these patients, but it didn't even slow the decline. And this is not really news. There have been many clinical trials done in people with dementia, in mild cognitive impairment, and in a whole host of different cognitive issues, and every single time it's the same story. They don't beat placebo. It doesn't show any benefits whatsoever. Even something like Piracetam, it doesn't work that well, and even when it does work, it doesn't work for very long. So the bar for showing something that is really approvable by the FDA is pretty low when it comes to this area. And even with the bar so low, and the trial being so long, it was for a year, it didn't show any improvements. The only positive thing that the trial found was that the drug was very, very well tolerated. There were basically absolutely no side effects. But there were no positive effects either. As far as they could tell, it did absolutely nothing at all. The people may as well have just been swallowing air. Let's go back to the studies for a second. If you search a website like PubMed or some other site that has a lot of studies listed, and you search for cognitive studies in Piracetam, you're going to notice something odd. You're going to notice that there are actually not that many studies done in people for whatever reason. You're going to see a lot of studies done in rats. You're going to even see a lot of studies done on zebrafish and even day-old chicks, right? Memory studies in zebrafish and day-old chicks, because obviously they got a lot to think about. That's a little bit weird, right? So why is that? And if you think about it, the one thing that has been proven about Piracetam is that it's a very well-tolerated drug. It's not a dangerous drug, right? You can take a lot of Piracetam and nothing will happen to you. So let's think about this for a second. Why would you conduct a study in animals, especially a memory study? The reason you would conduct studies in animals is because you don't know if the drug is safe, right? That's obviously not the case in Piracetam. Or it's a very invasive type of study. So in one of the methylphenidate studies that in rats, the ones that I showed in rats, they actually cut the head off the rat immediately after the study was done, and then did brain slices, right, to see if there was damage. Obviously, you can't do that in people. So that would be a situation where they would conduct it in rats or some other animal. But if you look at these studies, they're actually giving them memory tests, right? This is not what's happening. Obviously, it's not a dangerous compound. And the type of study they're doing is not one that would cause danger to the person in question. And if you think about it, the drug is cheap, it's obviously not dangerous, and there are tons of memory studies out there. There are tons of tools that we have to measure memory in people. Memory, cognitive abilities, there are all these dementia tests, Alzheimer's tests, IQ tests. There is no shortage of tests to test cognitive abilities, right? So why would you conduct all these studies in animals? One more thing I should make note of is the publication bias when it comes to drugs like Piracetam. There are probably just as many unpublished studies as there are published studies, and many studies that are looking into the effects of Piracetam that are trying to make a legitimate evaluation of what it does will make note of that, saying we know this company has done several studies on the cognitive enhancing effects, on the memory effects of Piracetam, yet they have not published those studies. Now, why do you think that is? Do you think it's because the studies showed great results? No, right? Most likely they showed the same things that the clinical trial showed, that there was no effect. So let me give you an example of what can happen when things like that happen. So let's say I've got a charm, and what I say is that this charm increases your odds of flipping heads on a coin flip. So a coin flip is 50-50, right? Let's say that I say that this one is 55. It gives you a 55% chance to land heads. Obviously, it's total nonsense, right? So what I might do is I might sponsor 10 studies. And in one study, there might be an outlier where it actually, it's just a statistical fluke, right? And in that study, it goes 55 heads. The rest are 50-50. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish that study, and then I'm not going to publish the other studies. There are no rules saying that I have to publish my research. If I want to not publish it, I don't have to. So that's what publication bias is. When we put all this information together, the picture becomes a lot more clear. Piracetam, every time it gets put to the test in a clinical trial, has come up empty-handed. The publications and studies that people tout, if you look at them closely, most of them are totally ridiculous. If the drug is so safe, right, and so cheap, why are most of the studies conducted in rats, zebrafish, and day-old chicks? Because those are obviously such great models for human thinking. And that, along with the publication bias, it really makes it quite clear what's going on. All these things don't make sense. Why is that? Because it is a snake oil product sold by snake oil people. The people selling this stuff, I think most of the time people, when they watch those type of people, they really get the vibe that this is obviously BS. But they have no way of proving that, right? Don't you think it's odd that with all of the problems that people have, one of the most common problems, I'd say the two most common problems that people come to the doctor's office with are fatigue and concentration problems, so cognitive problems. Even if it's not to the point where it's like dementia or something like that, it starts affecting people in their 30s and 40s depending on how well they've taken care of themselves. So it's one of the most common problems. And yet, nowhere in medicine do you see people prescribing this drug. Not anyone who's serious anyways. You would think that this would be all over the place. And the whole reason is that because anyone that looks at it and thinks about this information that I just gave to you, when you think about it and lay it all out, it's really quite obvious that it's a total BS product, right? It's sold by a snake oil salesman. It doesn't work. At least it's not been yet proven to work. And it's been around for a very, very long time. So it's unlikely to ever be proven to work. So I hope you found that helpful. If you have other questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.